the way to download it that I will show you. So first of all, go to laravel.com/docs/5.7, or just click laravel.com and click on documentations, and then make sure it's set to 5.7. Now, at the time I'm making this video, 5.7 is like the latest version of Laravel, but this video will work perfectly for 5.8, 5.9 versions of Laravel. All right. Okay, even if you're doing any Laravel 6, most of the things I teach in this video will work perfectly for you. All right. So now we're in the documentation. We need to scroll down to see how to install Laravel. First of all, it's telling us the things we need to have to be able to run Laravel. We need to have PHP 7.13 minimum installed, and then we need to have all these things set up in our PHP. All right. Now to install PHP, we just need to install a full package that has PHP involved in it. Now, if at this point you don't know what is WAMP server or LAMP server or XAMPP server, you need to quit this video, because this video will be too high for you. So before you learn Laravel, you should have known at least some basic PHP, installed PHP and all. So I have WAMP server. Just to be sure, because this is a basic tutorial. If you want to install WAMP server, you have to go to wampserver.com and install WAMP server, download it and install. That's the latest WAMP server. So in case your WAMP server doesn't have up to PHP 7.13, one thing you can do is to install fresh WAMP server. Remember that sometimes when you open WAMP server, it is not showing you English. So this is some language I'm not sure of, but okay, it seems like French. But if you click on this, it will show you English. It will start showing you English. You see, my page is already asking me to download. All right, but to translate. But don't use the translate option. Just use the English version, so that when you download your WAMP server, it will be in English. Now you have to download based on your system. I'm using 64-bit Windows 10. That's my computer. So use it too if you're using Windows 10. Now, if you're using Mac or any other operating system like Linux, you need to Google down WAMP server for Linux, or WAMP server for Mac. For Mac, it's called MAMP server, AMAMP, MAMP, because the first M there stands for Mac. And then same thing with Linux, it's called LAMP server for Linux. All right, like I said, I expect you to already know these things if you're learning PHP. Now let's look at my own WAMP server just to be sure. I just want to be sure that you know how to set up this. You click on your WAMP server, make sure it's running. Now to run your WAMP server, you need to start it. It's an app, so I'll type WAMP. See, mine is WAMP 64. I'll click on it. Then it usually gives you this funny warning, and then you say yes. And then you wait for between a few seconds to 2 minutes, depending on the kind of system you have. Basically, you're looking at this icon here, this WAMP icon. You're waiting for it to turn green. All right, all these things will pop up while it's booting. So when it finishes booting, it will gradually turn from red to yellow, then to green. When it turns green, then we're good to go. But if it is stuck in yellow after like 2 or 3 minutes, then it means your WAMP server installation has issues. Now, if your WAMP server installation is running and whenever you start it, it shows you a pop-up. Read the instruction in that pop-up. It's usually that a .dll file is missing. Now you need to go to Google and take the name of that file and type download the name of that file .dll. You'll see it in Google. It's usually a small text file. You download it, then you Google how to install DLL files in Windows. You will see where to copy and paste in your system. Then you run your WAMP server again. Usually in some systems there are usually like 4 to 5 DLLs that are missing. You just download all those things, put in your system, and your WAMP server will work perfectly. Alright, now see my WAMP server is now green, so which means I'm good to go. Everything is running. You see all services are running. Now we have to install Laravel. The easiest way to install Laravel is to use Composer. That's not just the easiest, it's the most professional way to do that. So click on this and it will take you to Composer web page. Alright, so you go to Composer website and just read the instruction on how to install WAMP server for install Composer for your own system. So Composer helps you, is a dependency installer for PHP. In case you're coming from JavaScript, the equivalent of Composer is npm. Alright, npm install node package manager. So you click on downloads Now it's going to give us instructions on depending on the kind of system you're using. I'm using Windows, so I would just click on this and install. Now I already have it, so I don't need to actually click on this. Alright, so if you just click on this, it's going to download it. Then after downloading, you install it. Now I want to let you know that if you finish installing Composer, you're not going to see anything. You understand? You don't need to run Composer anything. Once you've installed it, that's all you need to do. There's nothing like starting Composer and all. Now there are other ways you can install it depending on the system you're using, whether you're using Mac or anything. If you just keep scrolling, you see other ways to install it. Alright, cool. Now we've installed Composer, we can get back to Laravel documentation. So this is the first way to install it. I don't normally use this way, it's not interesting. The best way to install it, and of course this is how you're going to do stuff in other operating systems like Mac, but we're using Windows, and Windows is super easy. So in Windows, this is one easy way to install it. So the installation is super duper easy in Windows. As you can see, you just need to copy this and run it in your command prompt. Now you can use any command prompt of your choice. It is okay. For me, I like to use git bash, the git command prompt. So let's go show you how to download it. That's the best one I've used so far. So you can always find any one. There's the one that comes with your system automatically. For instance, if I type cmd here, it's going to show me a command prompt that comes with my system, you see. Then there's node command prompt. Alright. So if I do this, it's going to show me. This command prompt comes with every system. So, but I prefer node command. I prefer git. So I'll type git bash, hit enter, or download git bash. Anyone, hit enter. It's going to take you right to a special kind of command prompt that is being run by Git. You see, this is what I'm looking for. You see, git-scm.com/downloads. That's what we're looking for. We'll click on it. It takes us to Git SCM. Now that's where we need to be, and that's where we're going to download two things. You see, you can download for Mac, for Windows, for Linux. Since we're using Windows, we're going to hit this download. You see, this is the latest one for Windows. So this will automatically change to the system you're using. If you click on it, it's going to download. Now, by this time, my Composer download has completed, and it is less than 1 MB. It's like 750 kilobytes. So I'll click download, and we're good. I already have it in my system though. Alright. I already have it in my system, so I don't really need it. So now we've had all those things installed. Now we're going to have to copy this. Go to Laravel page, copy this line. Now we're going to go to where we want to have the Laravel installed. That's where we're going to open the command prompt for this. So usually it's on in fact, the only place, not just the best place, the only place you can do that is in, go to your WAMP server, go to your www directory. That's the only place you can do that. Then from your www directory, you can open, you can start a command prompt from there. Alright, so, and which is exactly what we're going to do now. So this is our www directory. It has opened. So I'm going to hold the shift key on my keyboard. Alright, the shift key. So press and hold it, then right click on an empty space, then release the shift key. It's going to show you these right click options, but it will show you PowerShell or Git bash. Alright, so you can use any of these to do what I want. I'll use Git bash. I'll click on Git bash, and it will pull up Git bash. Okay, cool. So my Git bash is running. Now I have to just drag it to this place. And I'll make the fonts big. Hold my control key, zoom in. So just to make it big enough. Then we paste what we had from Laravel. I'll right click and click paste. Oops. We have to go copy it. Copy. Right click, paste. Okay, here we have it. Now, all these things are really normal, but the last word is what you have to take note of. This is what Laravel will name the folder. Make sure you have your internet connected, because with your internet, this line, once we run it now, to go to the internet and try to download Laravel into this folder. So we don't want to call it this folder. What we want to call the folder is, since we're building a course management platform, I'll call it Laracos. Lara course. Alright, so with Lara course we hit enter. Make sure you have good internet. This particular part is going to take let's say between sometimes 1 minute to 5 minutes, depending on how fast your internet is. If you're in some country where your internet is super duper fast, this could happen in seconds. But if you are somewhere like where I am, where the internet speed is just average, this could take as much as 2 minutes to 5 minutes. So just chill and wait it out, wait for it to finish the downloads. Alright, so I'm going to pause this video until the downloads are finished, then I'll come back and we will continue. So right now the installation is done. Let me just show you how long it is. Now if your internet breaks along the way, you're going to see errors like this. So make sure that if there's an error that happens during this installation, it's like I'm 99% sure that it is because your internet broke. So make sure you maintain a steady internet. Now we're done here. The next thing we have to do is to enter into the folder, the Laravel folder. Remember, if you look at this, you see that it's in WAMP64, and this folder is WAMP64/ww. See, we're in ww. Now we're trying to get to Lara course. We're trying to penetrate this folder. So what we're going to do is the cd Lara course, hit enter, and we are in Lara course. You see the path has changed. Now we're going to do composer install inside this, so that composer install just basically says, look at all the packages that is listed. See all these packages from here. Now all these packages are listed, so we want to use composer install to install them. Alright, composer install. I believe that normally, because we installed Laravel with composer, this should have already installed all those packages. But in case you didn't use this method, some people use other methods to install composer, then you do composer install. But if you installed Laravel using composer, by default all those things should have been installed. So now what we're going to do is to try and start the Laravel app and run it. So the way to run Laravel app is php Artisan serve, hit enter. So to try and spin up create a special Laravel server and give us the URL. We now have to take that URL and go straight to our application, go straight to our browser application and try to visit that URL. Alright, so right now we're done. As you can see, it has started the Laravel server and it has given us the URL. So what you're going to do is just copy this, right click, copy. If you're not using git bash command prompt, you will not be able to right click. In most command prompt, you don't have the ability to right click. You just have to memorize this and type in your browser. So I'm going to paste this here. You know, this is 127.0.0.1. that is the same thing as home. So you can also type localhost in place of this. If I type localhost, it will still work. So hit enter and it will try and bring up your Laravel server. And mine is trying to open it right now. It's still opening. As you can see, it's rotating. So it's going to show us our Laravel website for the first time ever, and that's completes our first stage in Laravel app development. The very first stage is completed if we can see our Laravel server. Now if your server rotates endlessly, you might need to do either of two things: end this server by pressing Ctrl+C and go back to your browser. Okay, then restart it by using php Artisan serve. Go back to your browser and try to visit it again. This is a common problem you will face so many times during your development period. Alright, so anytime that this thing is rotating endlessly. So let me try it now. So what I'll do is just paste and go and know whether it will open. If it doesn't open, I'm going to stop this server. So I'm going to try and restart the server. The way to do that is to press Ctrl+C on your keyboard or Command-C. So now I've pressed it. As you can see, the server has stopped, and look at the browser. It has said this site can be displayed. Now I'll have to run my previous command, php Artisan serve, which is restarting the server. Now the shortcut to run your previous command in command prompt is to press your up arrow key on your keyboard. So I'll press the up arrow key. That's it. Press enter, and we are right there. See, the server is right started back. Now I can refresh. And of course, like I said, another thing we can try is to make sure that we're visiting, instead of 127.7, we can do localhost. It has already started. So this is it. As you can see, this is Laravel basic page. This shows that your site is working perfectly and everything is going on fine. That's basically what this shows. Now let's go inside and start looking at what Laravel has to offer from the inside. So if we go to our www folder, we open Lara course, see everything that was installed, everything. Now we have to open it with a code editor, something called a code editor. If you are watching this, you should have already have your own favorite code editor, but I use VS Code, not because it's the best in the world, but it's somewhere up there, and I just started using it and it just made sense to me. I just stuck with it. So if you in VS Code is Visual Studio Code, which is owned by, I think it's owned by Microsoft, so it works perfectly with Windows system. Now if I click on an empty space, I'll see open with VS Code. It's just that easy. So I'll click open with VS Code. Now if you don't have VS Code, what you can do is to go to your browser and type download VS Code. VS Code. If you have download VS Code, hit enter. You will download the one for your version. Alright, you see, it's that easy. Visual Studio Code. So it can be used for many languages: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever. So ours is starting up. If we just give it a few more seconds, it will boot up properly. So it's available on Mac too, depending on the system you're using. So this is the download page. You just find the one for your system. Alright, I use Windows 7. We use Windows 10. So you click on this and you will download. It's a very nice editor. So if you already have the one you're using, such as Sublime Text and so on, it's perfectly fine. Just use what works for you. Alright, so our VS Code has started now, but the other thing is there's another VS Code from a previous code I was writing. So look at it here. So these are VS Code, very beautiful. Now what we have to note is that on the left side of your screen is the list of the folders. You see, look at this folder. I started with app bootstrap config. And if we look at our folder here, you see that it's app bootstrap config. So if you compare side by side, you see that they are the same. So we open this folder using VS Code. Now we can access the codes inside. Alright. So a quick run through of what's happening here. So we have Laravel. So this is most of the code you'll be writing will be here. Here we have your controllers and your middleware and whatever. We'll get to that shortly. And then here you have your connections to the database, but the most important file here is in resources. In resources views, you will see this is where you write most of your HTML code. Here in this resources views folder, we'll get to that and you will get to understand everything perfectly. It's so simple. But before then, we need to configure our Laravel so that it will be able to connect to the database. All right. So we click on end. So usually if you're writing raw PHP, you have to write code that will connect to database, where you have to say is it connection, MySQLi connection, PDO, whatever. All those things, you don't do it in Laravel. You just have to enter the parameters in this folder, in this .env folder file. Sorry. Once you enter the parameters, you are good to go. Now, if you don't have a .env file, Laravel ships with .env.example. All you have to do is right-click and rename this .env.example to remove the .example extension, so it ends up as .env. Alright, so you right-click on it and click on rename. Alright, so here we are. Laravel has already created a key for us. If it didn't create the key, it will tell you in your command prompt that it didn't create the key. So you now have to run PHP Artisan key generate, but it created the key for me automatically. I need to let you know that it doesn't create it in all installations. So if you ever get an error here that there is a key missing or something, you have to run PHP Artisan key :generate. I'll try and see if I can write it. So this is what you have to run: PHP Artisan key generate. You run that. Once you run that, it's going to generate this 64 key. It should be unique for every Laravel app. Okay, cool. And then as we go, notice that there is a database connection here. By default it uses homestead, but I'll change it to my database name. Now I have not created a database yet, but I'll just enter this now, then go to the database and create it. So what I'll enter here is let's call our database name Laracon. Like I said, we've not created it yet. Then the username, and once you install your WAMP server, if you didn't tamper with anything username, you understand, if what I'm saying now is changed to you, don't ever touch it. So your username should be root by default. Alright, then your password should be empty. Okay, so now we have to go to our Laravel app and our database and try to save the world. So go to database, a WAMP server. Now we're going to go to phpMyAdmin. So it will try and pull up using our server. Now if it doesn't show up, just make sure you visit localhost/phpMyAdmin. That's what you will visit, and it will open phpMyAdmin. From then on, you can go ahead and create your own create a database for your Laravel app. So there we are. Now what we're gonna do is it opens this. Now we need to log in. So make sure that you have root here and you have empty here, unless you've changed it, which some people do. But if you've never tampered with this, then the login details should be root and empty. Okay, so I'll have to delete this password. Delete the password. So that is root and empty. Hit enter. Remember, I set it to MySQL. You can use MariaDB. If you click on this drop down, you will see other types of databases you can use. I just prefer to use MySQL. Alright, all of them are roughly the same thing. So click login. It's going to log you in. Then when we log in, we have to create a database. Alright, so we're logged in. Now you click on databases. If you've done this before, you should know the easy way to do that. So when databases opens, type here. We remember that we named our database Laracon. From here we called it Laracon. So I'll just copy Laracon. Sometimes in programming it's best to copy than to retype, because you might make mistake while retyping. So I'll right click and paste Laracon. Hit create. Now that's all we need to do. It has created a Laravel table as a database. As you can see, there are no tables inside. Alright, so let me quickly explain to you the whole thing about MVC. If in case you've been coding Laravel before, you may not need this explanation, but if this is your first time of learning Laravel, then you need to understand what MVC is. And if you understand it, you have understood the root of Laravel. You understand? So I'll explain what MVC is, and that will help you really deeply understand how Laravel works. You understand? So it will help you understand it from first principle. Alright, so I've created this first image, to explain the whole MVC process to you. This is what MVC looks like in any framework that you're using for MVC. Let's say you can be using Cake PHP, CodeIgniter, Laravel. They're all the same. So I'm just going to explain it once and for all so you understand it. If you can understand this, you've understood Laravel. Alright, so we're going to start with the database. You and I are very much created a Laravel. We created a database in phpMyAdmin, and remember we named it Laracon. So that's our database, and you know usually your database will contain tables, a lot of tables and fields. Alright, now this is where Laravel starts. From here is where Laravel starts. Okay, this database is outside of Laravel. Now we have the model. The model defines the relationship between each table. So in your database you can have users table, then you also have what other table now? Comments table. Alright, a user can have many comments, but a comment can only belong to one user. You see, that's the relationship. So in Laravel you're going to define that relationship inside your model folder. So let's go check out what model folder is. So inside app, you go to inside app. So your models are dumped in Laravel. It's just dumped directly here. Look at this user.php is the default model file that comes for your user, for your users. You understand? So this is your user file. This is the default model file that comes with it. You understand? So this is where you establish the connections between each tables. And as you can see, another thing that happens in the model, it says which, for security reasons, it's saying which fields are fillable. If you don't put any field here, somebody cannot update it from a form. You understand? And which fields are hidden, see? And so on. Alright, so but you can also create a separate folder and handle your users, your models right there, which is what I like to do. There are 4 folders here. You have console, exceptions, HTTP, providers, and then you need another folder that you can call models. It's up to you to do or to handle it the way you want. I usually like to create a separate folder where I have my models instead of dumping them all there. But that's what models is. You're just going to establish some prerequisites or parameters for the for the user table. Now, one thing you have to notice about models is that the naming convention, as you can see here is capital U, and the name is in singular, even though in our database it's going to be all small letters and they will be plural. So this table in our database will be users. That's the name of the table, users. But if we come to our Laravel folder, it's going to be user in the model folder. All right, every time we're going to be making reference to it, it's going to be user, and it will always start with capital letter. Now the next thing we look at is the controller. The controller is where you write the bulk of your code. All right, that's where you write a lot of your code. So the controllers can be found in HTTP controllers, you see. So the this is just basic controller. These controllers come by default with Laravel. So let's see what is inside the login controller. So if I click on login controller, you see this is what it talks about. So it's just telling it where to redirect to, and you keep creating functions here. Login function, logout function, different functions you want to do in your app. So I'm gonna say that when coding Laravel, this is where you're going to spend 60 to 80% of your time building. All right, so this is where you create all the functions, and as you can see, for each major thing you need to do, you have in a different folder for it. Look at this one. This is for registration. It has this function. The construct, of course, it has the validator function, so that when you're filling a registration form, it will be able to handle it, validate the form. It has the function that will create the user if you want to sign up, and so on. You see, reset password. So this is what the controllers are. We'll be working on these controllers. We'll be creating our own custom controllers for different things. So let's say we have a comments table in our database. We will need a comments controller. So for each table in your database, chances are you will need an equivalent controller, one file that is your controller for that table, and you will also need one file that is your controller for the model. That is your model. So you need a model file and a controller file for each table in your database. All right, unless you go advanced where you don't need them, but basically at this level, just know that any table in your database, for you to be able to work in your Laravel app, you need to have controller and the models for it. All right. Now the next thing here is you see, the controllers usually talk to the models. So in a typical controller, what we have here is not really a typical controller. This is just some controller that came with Laravel. All right. So they are doing some pretty advanced stuff there. Let me see. Let's open a controller here. Login controller. I forgot password. Controller. So they are doing pretty advanced stuff here. So you will not see that it is linked to a model. So, but for the most part, let's say 80–90% of the time we are working on a controller, we have to tell Laravel the model that it is connected to. That's why I put this arrow here. Every controller has to connect to a model. All right. So when you're working with a controller, I hope you can see the screen very well. So when you're working with a controller, you need to, at the top, link that controller to the model. So our user's controller will be working with user model. All right. So we have to write just one line of code that will tell this controller this is the model you are tied to. So our comments controller will be working with comment model, comment in singular now. So comments plural. Comments controller will be working with comment model. All right. So now we need to always link it. Then what if comment controller is also having a relationship with user model? Because a user will make a comment we can also link it. So sometimes in one controller you will see that you have one controller linked to several different models. It happens, and you will see as we build, need will arise where we need to link controllers to models. Alright, or multiple models. Now there's the route. So before I explain this route, I want to start from here, the view. This is what your users see. Your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript, this is where they all are. So let me show you this folder. So this is in resources. So if we just, this is our basic folder. So if we go to resources, we are going to see that there is JS. This is where you put all your JS file. For instance, if you're using Vue.js and all, this is where you put your JS file and all, JavaScript file, those screen slides and all. Of course, you can also put it in public, depending on how you're building your stuff, alright? Then you have Vue. This is where you put your HTML. So even though it is called .php, if you open it, you will see a bunch of HTML there. Okay, you see, this is HTML, is it not it? You see? But it's called .php so that some PHP code can walk into it. Laravel have this kind of unique PHP. I'm going to call it a funny PHP. It's called Blade. It's a templating engine. It's a way that you can write PHP shorter with shorthand. So consider it a shorthand for PHP. For instance, see here, they're trying to write an if statement. You see, if route colon has. See what they put behind the if. Instead of you opening and closing PHP tags, you understand, usually you're supposed to open PHP tag here and close it somewhere here, and even open it for each of these. Just use the @ sign. Once you put the @ sign in your HTML, Laravel automatically knows that you're starting a PHP code there. Very, very smart. Very, very smart. Okay, so this is what your users see. As you can see, it's basic HTML links. If we go back to that Laravel page that we created, then this is the page. You see, Laravel is bold here. If we come here, we're going to see it. You see Laravel, and it's bold because they wrote the CSS directly here. Look at the CSS at the top of the file. So they made this Laravel bold. That's what we're having here. And then these links, documentation, whatever, they are all here. Okay, so this is what your everything in views is what your users see. All right. So let's say a user clicks a link in Vue, or let's say the user clicks register link. Where is it? So let's say user clicks register link. As you can see, the way the link, the hypertext is written is different because they're using, instead of writing ahref, then whatever, they just wrote ahref and used Laravel Blade templating engine to point to a certain route inside our routes file. So this is what I mean. Somebody clicks on a link here in your view, and it points, we're going to point it to a certain route. This route is where we write all the links. All the links that people will click here, internal links though, all the internal links people will click here that will go within Laravel, we're going to list all of them in a file here, alright? So each of the link will now know which function in our controller to talk to. So right here, somebody clicks on this, we're basically telling it, go to our route file, check the register, the route that we named register, then use it and go to the controller and find the function that is called register. So let's see what is happening here. Somebody clicks register and it goes to route folder, goes to web.php, and it finds this. Alright, so now that register is built inbuilt into Laravel, so you may not see it, but this is what it finds. This is where it goes. Now this route here, we'll write further routes so you understand better, but this route here basically hits the controller. It basically come here, come to this place, finds the appropriate controller you're talking about, and goes to the appropriate function you're talking about and executes whatever is inside that function. So that's how Laravel works. Somebody clicks a link here, immediately that link is linked to the route. It goes to route file, scans through, finds the line that route is pointing to. Then from then it now knows where to go to in the controller. And then from the controller, it finds the appropriate function, then executes what's in that function. Maybe something in that function could be go to the database and get the list of users. So from then, it's going to go to the model. From model, it's going to go to the database, fetch list of users, pass through the model, get back to the controller, and follow whatever instruction that you wrote there. You understand? So that's simply how Laravel works. Sometimes you can skip the route file and just link directly to Vue. let's say inside a function at the end of the day you just want it to display a certain page, maybe an error page or maybe a redirect to whatever, and you don't want to use route, it's okay, you can just link it directly. That's why I put this line here. Alright, so this is how it works in Laravel. You have to take notice of the naming convention. As you can see, I named this payment. This starts with capital and stops here at singular, and then there must be controller in every controller file, so you have to name it payment controller.php. So anytime you see the file, you already know it's a controller. When you come to model, it's still in singular, but there is no model or anything extension. So all your model files will be the name in the database, but in singular and capitalized, which means it has to start with a capital letter. And these other ones are just like index.php, edit.php, whatever, .blade.php. So once you see .blade, you should expect to see there majorly HTML, but with some CSS, with some PHP, some funny kind of PHP. All right, I hope this whole thing made perfect sense. And what we're gonna do is to create a login and registration with Laravel. It happens automatically, but we're gonna create it. So the advice I normally have is when you have this your Laravel server running in a command prompt like this, always leave it. So create another command prompt and work with it while this one handles the running of your Laravel server. So I'll go here. Remember, right click, git bash. Then we are going to try and create Laravel. With one command you can create user registrations, login, password verification, and whatever. Just one command, and it saves you a lot of headache. And that's exactly what I want to do now. I want to use just one command to create all those things, to save myself a lot of headache. So to do that, you do PHP. I'm going to zoom so that you see what I'm doing. PHP Artisan make :auth. So once you do this and hit enter, you don't need internet. This will go into Laravel and create user registration, user login, and a couple of other things for you. So you see, it has been generated successfully. So the way you will know that this has been generated successfully is if you come to this page. As you can see, this page is entirely blank up here. If we refresh it now, it should come up with the registration and login links with extra pages. So I'll show you some of the extra pages that it has already created. So look at it, it has finished refreshing. And one thing you have to know is that Laravel server, especially on Windows, is fond of sleeping. So initially what happened was that my web page kept on rotating endlessly. So I pressed Ctrl+C on my server and restarted it like I told you earlier. So now you see it has created 2 new links for us. We can click on login, and it's going to show us the login page. So but let's see what's happening here. What other things that Laravel created. If we come to resources, views, we'll see that Laravel has created extra files. For instance, home.blade, it has created this file. It has created layout app.blade, see, and it has created auth. Now this auth folder inside views, this auth folder contains some interesting files. For instance, the login.blade. This is the page that contains login. See, it has written all this code for us. It has written all this code for us. This page contains login. This is form now. You're conversant with HTML forms, method, post, whatever. Remember the blade I talked about, then email, and so on. And then it has all this password, and then the login and the remember me. It just wrote all this code for us. Now what we're going to do is check here. Still trying to open. So if your server sleeps, just restart it. So you see a very beautiful login page already. Same thing with the registration page. It has created a registration page for us. So that is what is happening. This login page, look at it here. It was created here, and if you can see, it is inside this resources views auth. It created this folder, created a login, registration, password verification, and so on. And these are basics. So after logging in, if your login was successful, you'll be landed at home.blade. Alright, Now, same thing with, if we go to the routes web.php and check what has happened there, you see that it has added a group of routes called auth. This auth route contains several routes that is default to Laravel. You will understand later better, but it also added a specific route, the kind of thing I was trying to explain before with here. I said if somebody clicks a link, comes here, and then checks which function in the controller to trigger. That's exactly what's happening right here. So if somebody clicks a link, it comes a link that is named home. It comes here in the route file, searches, finds the link's name, and it goes straight to the controller. It says home controller, and this is the function, index function in home controller. That's what this means, index function in home controller. So if we want to see this function or what is happening there, we have to go to app, go to so we'll go to app folder, go to HTTP, and we are looking for home controller. See, it has created home controller by default for us. So see what is happening in home controller. Home controller has a function called index, and the only thing that function is doing is it goes to the view file and displays a file named home.blade.php. So it goes to our view folder, looks for a file named home.blade.php. So if we come here in resources, views, see view, then it's looking for home.blade.php. That's it. So this is the only instruction in this function. And what is in home.blade.php? Just hey, welcome or something. You are logged in. You see, that's the only thing there. So I hope this whole thing makes sense, and you kind of now understand how everything is connected together in Laravel. Now I've taken my time to teach you very well all the basics, point out everything to you. So in the next video, we'll go straight to actually building the app we want to build.